done that many at this point. For those that might be joining in here for the first time, we have been doing these webinars since October last year, weekly. And if you want to check out our previous episodes, please follow and like our or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch all of our latest episodes there. Um, for today, I'm joined here with Jose, my co-host. He has 20 years now of healthcare consulting experience and currently owns a
Yo,
mental telehealth clinic. And today's episode, sort of a spin-off of I would say, the breach incident episode that we did, about 3 weeks ago. I'm going to post that episode here in chat, where we sort of talked about the OCR breach
naughty
notification or
list.
naughty list, where if any practice in the U.S. that was fined, what was it over? If there was over
If you
500,
have more than 500 incidents in the breach, then you're automatically on the website.
you're on the
You're
list, and
automatically on a list, but you're just not on the website if you're under 500.
which is the OCR portal. If you're interested, I posted that link here as well. Don't end up on this list is the bottom line. But
Yeah.
um, today we're going to be just doing a little spin-off. There's a couple. These were recent audits, correct?
These
Or
are
fairly
recent
recent.
court cases that the Justice Department released press releases. And what we really wanted to do was go over some stuff, some instances where I could literally say, hey, this probably didn't happen the way the Justice Department says it did. This could have easily happened to somebody. And here are a few examples of how. You know what I mean? Because, for example, which one's the first one you wanted to bring up?
I
Because
was
I
going to
sent you
say
three of
let's talk about the nurse practitioner.
them. Yes, the
The
nurse
one
practitioners.
convicted of
So
200 million in healthcare fraud.
yes,
I'm posting that
yes.
article
Okay,
here in chat.
so this is a Florida nurse practitioner, and okay. When you see the number $200 million in false and fraudulent claims for expensive genetic testing and medical equipment of Medicare beneficiaries, okay? Remember that this doesn't necessarily mean that she pocketed 200 million, okay? What happened was one, she's in the area of Miami. Miami is notorious for things like this. But two, she may not necessarily have disagreed with most of these cases, but the way that this case kind of works out, you can see that, especially at first, she didn't think she was doing anything wrong, right? So a
Yeah.
nurse practitioner is an advanced mid-level practitioner in the state of Florida. For those that are outside of the state of Florida, they have a certain level of autonomy that is given to them once they reach a certain amount of hours. Now, for billing purposes, there's still wonky things. Then the question of do they really have autonomy pops up. But for the purposes of this, what basically ends up happening is that this nurse practitioner ends up getting involved with a genetic testing company and basically a DME company. So here's what would happen. She would go and write these thousands of orders for medically unnecessary orthotic braces and genetic tests. All right. So she doesn't bill for $200 million. Let's be perfectly clear. The nurse practitioner billed for the office visits, and she fills out scripts for what? For the orthotic braces saying they're medically necessary, for the genetic testing saying they're medically necessary, for all these Medicare beneficiaries. Okay. Now, in one of the claims that the Justice Department made, she billed Medicare as though she were conducting complex office visits with the patients and routinely billed more than 24 hours of office visits in a single day. All right. Now, even in the Justice Department's own press release, they're saying she was involved with $200 million, excess of $200 million of fraudulent billing to Medicare, but they say that she only personally pocketed 1.6 mil.
Only. God.
Well, Ray, think about it. That's
I know.
1%.
I know
That's
that's
less
true.
than 1% of what she
True.
billed. So it was literally she didn't bill incorrectly because she billed for the office visits. What
True.
ended up happening was that she you can clearly see that she is billing for way too many visits in a single day. And these are the kinds of things that you get caught up on these random algorithms, right? On these algorithms with the federal government with CMS that they've been using since the PPACA came out, since meaningful use came out. So what you want to do is that you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the spacing of these visits,
Mhm.
to who am I referring to, making sure there's a clear no kickback issue with these people. Because we're going to come back to that kickback issue because it can get very complex with some of these ones. This is a simple matter of somebody came to her and said, "Hey, you're already this is probably what happened because I've seen this happen with some of our clients. Hey, you already are referring us patients for these braces. You're already referring us for these genetic tests. Let's just crank it out more." And to make their life even easier, these companies were sending pre-filled orders of the products. This is where the problem lies. This is where that canned medicine rule comes into play.
Yeah.
This is where, guys, you can't be doing this. You can't make the provider's life that easy because then it comes back to bite everybody in the butt, literally and figurative. So basically, out of all this 200 million, they only, and I say only because when you say excess of $200 million in Medicare billings, she was only convicted of one count of conspiracy of committing healthcare fraud and wire fraud, and four counts of healthcare fraud, and three counts of making false statements relating to healthcare matters. $200 million, excess of 200 million. She pocketed 1.6, and they're saying she's only guilty of seven counts. Now,
Crazy.
these seven counts add up fast. A max penalty of 20 years
20
for the
years. Yeah.
conspiracy, yeah, for the health fraud and wire fraud, 10 years for each of the healthcare fraud counts, and 5 years in prison on each false statement. There are other things that come into play when it comes to sentencing, right? Did she flip on everybody? How quickly did she flip on everybody? Or was she the actual person they were going for? Was she the target of the case? One of the other things that come into play, how old is she? She's 45, which means she's going to get a higher end of that. If you're in your 55, 65, 70s, which some of these cases do happen to be this way, they're not going to give you 40 years because you don't have 40 years of your life left, right? So there's different ways that lawyers can negotiate these down. Those were maximums, right? And obviously she's going to lose her medical license. Let's
Yeah. I
duh.
mean, that's a
And
given.
she's going to be on a blacklist. So even if she gets out and she can get a PA license or an RN license or an M or even go back to school to be an MD, which would be hard to do for all of that stuff, but even if she could not work in a facility or an organization that takes federal funding. This is where the background checks come into play if you're an administrator. This is where you go and check the OIG blacklist to make sure that they do not pop up. This is a scarlet letter on her career. Her career is done.
I'm trying to, I was trying to look up to see what the actual, what they ended up convicting her of and how much time she actually
She's
had to
scheduled to
serve.
be sentenced on
I
December
think it's this,
14th.
I was going to say,
So
I
it
saw that.
last week.
I can't
Yeah, I
find
don't
anything
know.
though. That's fine.
Yeah.
I did
And
find
then
that
of course,
this was in Miami, Florida,
yeah, and
apparently.
of course,
Go figure.
this is also at the bottom a little press release slash badge of honor for the fraud section. No, what is it? The criminal division's fraud section that was developed under in 2007 under the Obamacare program.
Oh, wait a
So I
second. I
mean,
think I did find something here. Hold on, let me see that.
you can
If
probably look up what the
so,
judge
she
finally
was sentenced
sentenced her.
today to 20 years in prison for her role in a scheme to defraud
That's it.
Medicare by submitting over 192 million in claims for genetic tests. Yeah, this is her, Elizabeth Hernandez.
So
20
so now
years.
remember, 20 years is what she's got, right?
Yeah.
but with good behavior and the fact that this is non-violent, she'll
Yeah.
probably get out in
Yeah.
10 to 12, right? Which means that she's still going to be 55, but she's not going to be able to work in healthcare.
Nope.
So, guys, this is something where when you come across these relationships, you need to make sure and you vet them with an attorney or with a consultant so you don't accidentally be one of these people. Now, she apparently was doing all these office visits through telemedicine so she could accelerate through. Remember that CMS is tracking this stuff. There's ways to game a system on the scheduling, but you need to be careful if you're using 214s, 215s, 204s, 205s, and you've got six of them in an hour, that's going to throw a giant red flag. Ray, did you want to throw this link so that way if anybody wants to take a look at it, they can take a look at it. This is straight off the justice.gov, you
Yeah,
know.
I put the links to that.
Okay.
I took it, or yeah, I sent that the link, and I'm actually going to post the one where she was. It states her actual conviction as well. I
Because I
just was
mean,
generally curious because, like, when we were exploring it, you said 20 years, and then also it was 10 years on each of the counts.
yeah. Yeah, so
So,
basically they gave her the maximum for the conspiracy
yep,
and just gave her nothing for the other ones.
yep.
Made it 20 years. Cool. So let's go over the next one unless you got questions about it.
No,
Which one's the next one?
I'm okay with moving forward. Let's go over the Florida conspirator sentenced to 54.3 million Medicare fraud scheme.
Oh yeah.
This
So this
was
is the one.
Luis Lacerda,
Yeah,
another
yeah.
West Palm Beach. Oh man.
So, well, the problem with this one is that you can see how this one was one. This is the West Orlando News one.
I posted in the
Okay,
posted
I'll
in the
just open
chat.
it up
Yeah,
in the
the
chat.
West
Right.
Orlando news is just
So this one, the what annoys me about this one is that this is younger guys. This is young, hungry people out of Fort Lauderdale. A 37-year-old, a 36-year-old, a 38-year-old, and a
yeah.
45-year-old. All right. So they have anywhere ranging from 3 years to 5 years probation, 3 years in jail in federal prison, club fed, or 5 years of probation for $54.3 million in healthcare fraud. Now, this one is interesting because this is kickbacks and bribes to
Yeah.
telemarketers and telemedicine to secure orders for medically unnecessary prescriptions that were billed to Medicare. All right. Now this one is one where these guys actually had the cash on them because they were the marketing agency.
Yep.
The way that this scam
They
works
were in on it
when
together, obviously.
they were in on it together, but the problem is that this is one where you could see how this was this was definitely one that it's hard for me to say, hey, they didn't mean to do it, but there is ways to have this happen to you and you not necessarily be aware that this is illegal. All right. Because the kickbacks and bribes piece is really, really tricky. The DME market in Florida and through most of Medicare is extremely competitive, especially when they went back to for certain devices. And we're not talking about the big ticket items that are not auctioned, but you bid to Medicare to be able to provide those services to Medicare patients. We're talking stupid things like adult diapers, like labs, like basic DME crap, like orthotics or walkers, canes. And we're not talking these rollers, these motor scooters. We're not talking any of that. These guys, all they did this according to the court documents from 2018 to 21. They set up a marketing scheme where they would go get the providers to write these scripts and they would pay the providers based on what they received. and there's other ones where I've seen where they'll market to the patient. The patient will say, "Hey, I want to get X," because they marketed it to the patient. And then them as the DME will go and say, "We'll get you set up with one of the doctors. They'll evaluate you, and the evaluation always comes back with a prescription that says it's medically necessary." And then magically, the marketing company is also the DME company, which then sends them the script, sends them whatever the device, or this one was topical creams, which for a lot of people that don't want to take meds or have GI issues, topical creams are huge. Voltaren, I mean, my mother-in-law, my mother, my grandmother, they all swear by Voltaren. And Voltaren for the longest time wasn't over the counter, so you had to get a script for it. So you can see how a lot of this stuff was wild.
You want to know something
These
funny?
guys, what?
It says in the article that uh, it says each previously pleaded guilty to their role in conspiracy in which the co-conspirators owned and operated pharmacies that participated in Medicare program, including one in Jacksonville, Florida, which is
Yep,
and
yep.
I was curious. I'm like, well, what was the pharmacy's name and where was it located? And it was called Cure Pharmacy, and it's not too far from where I'm at.
Well, I mean, I look at this and these guys actually had the cash because the federal government got them to repay it. They forfeited it and they have to pay in restitution. So one had to forfeit 15.5 million and pay back 54 million. Remember, you're dealing with the federal government. Even though the federal government said, "Hey, you guys only stole 54.3 overall, 15 plus 54 million is more than 54 million."
Yep.
They're tacking on interest, they're tacking on penalties. So you've got to be careful. This is something that even well, I can actually say this now that it's been a couple years. I was opening up a telemedicine business or pre-COVID, 2016, 2015, and a DME company actually came up to us and was like, "Hey, we want to do this. We'll push the patients to you. They'll be Medicare. You can bill for the office visits, and then if they need these devices, then you just send them back to us." Problem is that even though they weren't going to be kicking us a commission for sending them back, and the providers I got understood that only if it's medically necessary. I do not care about the marketing piece. This can still be seen as a kickback
Sure.
because they were the marketing company sending me the patients and I'm sending them back. This is a problem. We ended up deciding not to move forward because our my lawyer was like, "Hey, even if you justify it, even if you can show that you have a high percentage of patients that aren't going back because you were denying the medical necessity, this whole thing looks really ugly. You should not get involved." And so I didn't. And it turned out about a year and a half later, they found somebody else that did. They got in trouble. And then the husband ended up in jail for a couple of years. I think he's out now. But this is the problem. If you're having a struggling practice, we're always looking for more patients. I don't know a practice that is not looking for more patients. And you're telling me that you're going to vet the patients so it's something that I can do easily. I don't have to go through the vetting process. It's almost too good to be true. And it turns out it is. Here's the irony with this. This is all kickback issue. This is all this. This is all that. However, when you look at the value-based model now they want you to do the kickback. Now they want you to do the internal marketing scheme and keep the patient within one ecosystem. The difference is that the federal government has termed what is an acceptable version of this. So I do foresee, and some of the lawyer friends that I have do foresee that high tech and Stark are going to have to be revisited because there's a lot of questions of, again, over here it says this is illegal, but over here it's what the federal government wants you to do. So then what do I do? Which law do I follow? Do I follow the one or do I follow the other? It seems like I'm in trouble no matter which one I do. And so this is where You want to have an attorney that guides you through that Scylla and Charybdis scenario and lets you know, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to be very, very tight on these policies and procedures. So that way, if someone comes in as the client, I can say on advice to attorney, and then one, two, three, four, and keep on moving. You know what I mean? Because it's all about documentation.
Absolutely.
I guarantee you that these guys being 37, 36, 38, they were flying by the seat of their pants. They were just trying to grow the crap out of their business. And they knew marketing. And they knew the quickest way to get patients in and out was telemedicine, especially after COVID, post COVID. So I could definitely see how easy this was to do.
And
And
they're
on
paying for
accident.
it for the rest of their
Yeah,
lives.
and now they're paying for it.
It's crazy.
But these guys, I feel bad for them, but I don't. And what I mean by that is I feel bad for them because they're young. The
Yep.
oldest guy here was 45.
Yep.
The youngest is 36. Frey, what are you? 35 now?
32.
32. So I mean, you're looking that your career in healthcare is over. You have a blacklist for any. You can't work with an organization that takes federal funding.
I
And
mean, let
depending on
alone
your
anything
political
though.
beliefs,
Think
there's
of
only
it.
going to be
Trying to get
more
a job, this is
situations
so
with federal
hard.
money or less. Huh?
I said just try to find a job in any industry, I think would be a tough situation
It would.
at this point, you
Well,
know?
yeah, and that's the problem is that there's so many different industries that are having federal funding attached to it in some way, shape, or form. I mean, they couldn't go to a construction company.
No.
They couldn't go and build roads because roads are government contracts.
Yep.
And if they found out, if the federal government finds out that you do have somebody on there, you lose the contract. So what's more important to you?
Obviously the contract.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me?
That's
Once you're in like Flynn. You know how hard it is
oh
to get
yeah.
rid of somebody that has a government contract?
Oh yeah.
It's a pain in the butt to get in, but once you're in, man, it's a mafia. So cool. You got any questions about this one?
No,
Again, if you
I'm
guys want
good.
to take a look at it, this is all relatively local news, but I'm finding it from Justice Department and then going backwards.
Well, let's do the big boy. This was the that national healthcare
Yeah.
fraud. Uh,
Yeah.
what was there? 193 defendants charged over
Yeah, so
2.75 billion.
this was a big mix of stuff.
I'll
This is
post the
the
article
six
in
hundred
the chat.
million dollar in healthcare fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. All right. So let's see what the Justice Department says these people did. And then we'll go and figure out how they did it on accident. Or the fact that some of these people were probably just following orders. So if you want to read some tidbits of it, Ray.
So this was
Okay.
it says
See.
the Justice Department announced the 2024 National Healthcare Fraud Enforcement Action, which resulted in criminal charges against 193 defendants, including 76 doctors, nurse practitioners, and other licensed medical professionals in 32 federal districts across the United States for alleged participation in various healthcare fraud schemes involving 2.75 billion in intended losses, about 1.6 billion in actual losses. Let's see.
So when we look at this, guys, the healthcare fraud, the main doc, the owner of the practice, the
Here,
one man that is named in this article, Matthew James of
Matthew
East
James.
New
Yep.
Northport, he's the guy that's going to be the poster child. He is the target of the investigation. He's screwed. One, because he got 12 years in prison. But second, because this is the guy in charge. So they're going to assume that he knew exactly what was going on. And with something this large, it's very hard to assume that he didn't know what was going on.
So let's go over the charges. It says the
Yeah.
charges alleged include over 900 million fraud scheme committed in connection with amniotic wound grafts, the unlawful distribution of millions of pills of Adderall and other stimulants by 5 defendants associated with a digital technology company, and over 90 million and fraud committed by corporate executives distributing adulterated and misbranded HIV medication, over 146 million in fraudulent addiction treatment schemes, over 1.1 billion in telemedicine and laboratory fraud, and
All right.
over 450 million other healthcare fraud and opioid schemes.
Yep. And then
Goodness.
this guy, but this guy specifically, because this guy was the 600 million. You
Yep.
read the 2.75 billion is that this department justifying its existence.
Yeah.
But because they're saying, hey, we recovered what we spent in Ukraine last year. But okay. So we go and say, hey, this guy, Matthew James in East Northport, he was he was billing services for physicians. So he was a billing company. And he was basically doing plastic and orthopedic surgeons, a lot of cash. However, as a third party medical biller, he submitted claims to insurance companies and, when necessary, requested reconsideration of appeals or of denied claims, typically earning a percentage, which is most billing companies. You guys know this if you're in the industry, they're average of between 6 to 8%, whether they
Yeah.
charge you per claim or on a percent. Usually, a percent of what they recover, it usually averages out to 8% of what you're billing out, right? The problem was this guy, James, was ordering his billers to, one, act like they were the patients, two, act like they were the doctors, and three, manipulating the super bills. Okay. Now, this is very, very important because we can sit here and say, hey, I, as a biller, know that my provider miscoded. If you're an admin, you know your provider's going to miscode. That happens.
Yeah.
That's okay. But there is a correct procedure for correcting this. One, you do not tell the provider what the code should be before the visit. The codes, remember the order of operations. The diagnosis happens, the note is written and signed, then you do the super bill. The note is signed by the provider, then the super bill. If you start messing with this whole process all of a sudden can get caught up in fraudulent billing very quickly. What is the order of operation? Were you coaching the provider on what to code? Were you coaching him to upcode? Were you coaching him to undercode? Believe it or not, undercoding is just as much of a fine and a penalty as it is overcoding. So this is a guy that, even if we were to be charitable, he was screwing up.
Yeah.
Now, he took it one step further because he was hungry. He was going and saying, hey, I'm going to go and direct my doctors and the patients to go and do these elective surgeries in the emergency rooms. Now, why is that? Again, if you're
Got a,
unfamiliar with billing,
got a code.
hospitals get to code higher. Emergency rooms get to code higher. They have different rates than your office, than even your surgery center that is not an emergency or not attached to a hospital. Your ASC. This is absolutely crazy that he thought he could get away with this.
It's crazy to think that did he have an attorney that was advising against it? It's like, or
I guarantee you he didn't have an attorney until he needed one.
it's crazy. That to me is insane.
So, yeah, so then it would get better. So then when the insurance companies would go and say, no, 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 you're not doing this elective surgery in the emergency room, then he would impersonate the patients again to demand the insurance companies pay more, pay for the visit. Guys, this is wild. This is where that identity theft comes into play. This is where that healthcare fraud comes into play. If Don't do any of this. But if you are going to do any of this in a charitable manner, again, it's that whole coding and billing operation, right? My billers want to be very, very effective and efficient, and I want to send the cleanest claim possible. and I want to make an amendment to the note, or I want to make an amendment to the bill, or I want to meet this macro measure. Perfect. You're allowed to make a change to the note, but it has to be signed by the provider when you amend the note.
Right.
The insurances will still accept it if you amend the note. That's not a big deal. Things happen. Everyone understands that they're human, but you have to do this in a proper manner. I've seen companies get in trouble because, hey, we need to meet this macro measure. Did you ask the patient about your smoking cessation? Yeah. Well, then why isn't it in the documentation? Go put it in. Well, now I'm coaching them. Now I'm telling them to do this code. Oh, hey, if I do this, or hey, if you just document this and this, all of a sudden, instead of a 213, it's a 214.
Yep.
Now, for those of you that don't know, a 99213 is a pretty standard office visit. A 214 is a relatively complex office visit. The difference in payout to Medicare, at least in Northeast Florida, but I believe it's the same all the way around, the difference is $25 per claim just on that one code. Not to mention the fact that if I told him to go over this review of systems and to document the smoking cessation and to document the diabetes thing and to document the weight loss thing and to do this and to do this and to do this, all of a sudden I have enough documentation that hey, this 213 originally is now documented to a 215 level, and he only spent 15 minutes with the patient. This is where people get in
Crazy.
trouble on accident. And they don't mean to because they genuinely were trying to do the best that they could. But the federal government's going to treat you the same, whether you're this jerk off or whether you're the person that just did it on accident because you're just trying to do right by your people and do right by your organization. There's no way I can say that this guy didn't know what he was doing with $336 million in restitution charged to him. There's no way. I can't defend it. I
No,
can't.
no.
But I can see how portions of this could have been done. And I've seen it in the field. You don't want it to happen that way. And this is why sometimes you want to make sure that even though your billers and coders may be a different department or a vendor, which is completely normal, you want to go and make sure that, hey, look, we have clear operating information. We have clear training. I have seen hospital trainings where the billing person goes in, especially when CPT, when the ICD-10 first came out and the new CPT codes came out. Man, did I see some trainings from hospital systems that were just absolutely wild. Now I'm seeing it to where for certain things, the hospitals are saying, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you need to change this note. And this note needs to say A, B, C, and D. So they can extend the stay of the patients in the hospital because they have Medicare or they have Medicaid and they can actually get money out of those insurances because they're a facility. They're an FQHC, so this is it gets very ugly very fast, guys. So make sure that you're aware of what's going on because the second you start this crap with the best of intentions, you go down this rabbit hole, and all of a sudden everybody's feeling a little less pressure economically. All of a sudden, you forget where you were, man. Real fast. You forget that you were even doing something slightly wrong, and you moved into the I don't even know what's right anymore.
That's a
So,
good point.
uh,
Always have
yep.
somebody in your corner too. I mean, I feel like some of these decision made, it's like,
Well, so remember too that you may have a lawyer, you may have a consultant, you may have an office manager, but this is where integrity, no matter what, comes into play.
right.
You know what I mean? Like, you got to have someone with integrity working on this stuff with you because if not, you're not going to see the forest for the trees because you're just going to be hungry. And then you're going to be positively reinforced. And what happens when you get positive reinforcement? You do it again and you do it again. And it gets a little bit easier every single time. Every single time. And then you get caught because somebody did something stupid, or you did it one too many times, or you pissed off the wrong employee and they whistle blew.
My money's
Remember,
on
guys,
you done it one too many times. That's the
remember, guys, if you're a whistleblower, you make 10% of what they get. So if this guy has a whistleblower, 336 million, you're pocketing you're pocketing, I'm not working again. You got generational income now. 33 million. I mean, you're probably gonna have to pay
you get.
taxes on it,
I was gonna
but you're
say
still walking away with 15,
you get
no matter
taxed
what
half of
state
it.
you're in.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, but you're still walking away with 15 mil. Do you know what a lot of people can do with 15 mil? Shoot, Ray, right now, I can tell you right now, you and I could
I,
put 15 mil into a bond that's doing 4%, and we only work for the next 3 years of our life. After that,
yeah,
we're living on the interest, never touching the principal. And that interest is hundreds of thousands of dollars.
yep. Sounds about
Guys,
right.
this stuff happens fast, so you got to be careful and got to be aware of it. Remember that every alphabet agency wants to make us look like we're the worst people in the world. We're the new RICO targets. Thank you, PPACA. So, there was a third one, and then I had one more that I'd found that I wanted to touch,
I think
but
that was it. We talked about the nurse practitioner. We talked
okay.
about the this one, the healthcare fraud, and then we talked about the group of the group of young gentlemen.
Okay. So I'm gonna put this one in the chat because this is one that I found later on. Um Later on over the weekend while I was watching the game. This one happened in Colorado. Nurse practitioner has agreed to pay 90K to resolve allegations that she unlawfully prescribed controlled substances, including dangerous opioids and drug combos, in violation of the Controlled Substance Act and False Claims Act. Here's what she did supposedly. She wrote prescriptions for controlled substances that were in dosages and frequencies and in combinations with other controlled substances that were outside the course of professional practice, were not reasonable and necessary, and
Uh,
were not for a legitimate medical purpose. How does this happen? This happens very, very easily. Very, very easily. This is why the PDMPs are put into place in every single state by the DEA. Because if you are even in the environment of prescribing controlled substances, you need to check that PDMP and document when you checked it before you send out a script. Because if you don't, you're liable for what the pharmacy fills out.
yep,
Now, granted, this woman couldn't have done it alone. Because in order to get caught prescribing controlled substances, there has to be a pharmacy that's filling the prescription.
exactly.
But the pharmacists are never the ones that are on this. It's always the providers. Because they have a lot of the pharmacy techs, they don't care. A lot of the people that own pharmacies aren't even pharmacists.
Well,
They
yeah,
don't
they get
have
the order and they're
licenses.
filling it. Yeah, it
They
doesn't.
don't have licenses. They don't, I
Yeah,
mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like every pharmacist is over there in the pharmacy making the drug like some kind of alchemist, like that's not how this works. This isn't Game of Thrones, right? So, I mean, this is quite simple. I could easily see this happening here in even my practice, which is one of the things that I get. This is one of the things that I'm actually very, very careful on, and I actually do audit my own practice with this stuff. Let's start with this. I have a patient, they're on Adderall. They should not be on pain medication. Pain medication and mental health drugs do not play well together. Mental health drugs don't play well with a lot of different drugs, and pain drugs don't play well with a lot of other drugs too. So, this is where you can easily see that Miss Preston, a nurse practitioner, got a little bit over her skis, and 90,000 really isn't that big of a number. So, it's not like she was profiting off this thing,
no,
but she was working for a practice or working for herself, and the market must have known that she's a little bit loose with the prescription pads. Hey, she doesn't have a problem with you having Oxy and Adderall. She doesn't have a problem with some of these cocktails that even I see here in Florida, where I even had a Medicare patient come to us with the cocktail of Ambien, hydrocodone, and Adderall. And my provider,
What?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, no, no. So again, this patient was 84 years old. Her husband's around the same age. They lost their ish when my provider said, pound sand on this script. I'm not touching this.
Yeah.
You are going to get me in jail, like Miss Preston, right? Now, here's the problem. A lot of these patients don't know what these drugs do. This is, of course, assuming that these elderly patients are actually taking their own drugs. We'll go on to that in a second. But this elderly man didn't understand, hey, why are you saying no to my wife? My wife has pain, my wife can't sleep, and she has problem focusing. And well, I was like, hey, the provider tried to explain to your wife, but I didn't tell him this, but I thought this, and I was like, well, whoever put her on these drugs basically created a giant drug addict. Because this cocktail, all three of
That
those
is
meds are
very
habit
terrible.
forming.
Oh yeah.
All of them are terrible. All of them are
Terrible.
habit forming. So I was like, sir, do you know what the side effects for these drugs are? Do you know how these drugs work? And he's like, no. I was like, hey, do me a favor. Let's go through it. I'm on the phone with you. Let's Google the first one, hydrocodone. What does it do? It's a pain management drug that the way it works is it makes you sleepy so you have less pain. Okay, cool. Let's do it. Ambien. What's Ambien do? It helps you sleep. Okay. Now let's remember that your wife is 84 years old. Although this could happen to a 45-year-old, a 35-year-old, or a 20-year-old. And
Mhm.
if they take these drugs wrong, she doesn't wake up tomorrow. You need the Adderall just to keep her heart pumping, sir. This is the problem. I was like, depending on your wife's pain, she may not need the hydrocodone or the Adderall. She just takes the Ambien at night when she's getting ready to go to bed. Boom, you're good to go. Now, one, I've saved you a ton of money on your drugs. Two, your wife isn't a walking drug addict. And three, she has a better quality of life. But your provider has to give a shit, pardon my French, and you have to have a team that's willing to sit down with the loved ones of these patients and
So,
explain, hey, sometimes these cocktails may have sounded like a good idea at the time, and nobody may have looked at it for a while because, hey, it's working, whatever, here's the script, bye. But you have to keep up in the dosage after the body gets accustomed to this.
did you ever get the provider's name?
I did. That provider is retired now, so we didn't follow through, but
Go
we
figure.
what we basically did was that internally we said, hey, any patient that is referred to us from that office, we're going to review and we're going to interview the patient before we even take this liability on. Because what we have is some people that are around your age and my age that are on a similar cocktail, but they're selling it. Or they're
Yeah.
coaching their grandma, they're coaching their mom to get these drugs or some of these drugs, and then they're turning around taking it themselves or selling it. So this is one of the problems with telemedicine, right? If you don't establish the patient in the office, they can be reading WebMD while they're talking to you.
Does
This
that
was the
cut?
problem with California. This is the problem with California and Colorado when they legalized marijuana. Hey, you have anxiety, right? Yeah, okay, here's your script.
How do you get around that? Because I mean,
You
what
get around, well, so there's no way to perfectly get around the cleverness of the human
is it
mind,
the
right? Like life
yeah.
finds a way. It's a very Jurassic Park in that respect, right? But what we can do is we can document everything we can to CYA, which is what the most important. Sadly, there are two main facets of healthcare that everyone should keep in mind. Number one, do no harm. Number two, CYA. Number three, C number two. Right? So this is how we protect ourselves from a very litigious society and from a federal government that's interested in making the headlines. The DA in all these articles is always mentioned.
Yeah.
The team in charge of the investigation, this awful provider, is in there. The division is in there. So this is where, guys, we got to protect ourselves because nobody's going to protect us. We're past that stage in healthcare. If you didn't notice from, Mr. Thompson's untimely death a couple weeks ago, right? So we need to protect ourselves. And the way that we do that is understanding what the monopoly rules are so we don't get in trouble. This is where a consultant, this is where having an attorney come into play. This is where, hey, we want to develop another in house program for additional revenue. Run it by your attorney, run it by your lawyer. Yes, it's going to cost you a couple grand, but the couple grand on the front end saves you the tens of thousands on the back end. This woman for 90K and for 90K that she has to pay back in damages and civil penalties will never be able to work again.
Yeah.
And they're not even broadcasting how much money she made from this. Which tells you if she had to pay 90K in civil penalties, she probably walked away with 45. She wasn't even that big of a
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
It's
She
not
might
like
have got lucky and
last
got
year.
caught early. That's what I'm thinking.
It's not like, but this could have been literally a nurse practitioner that has 4,000 patients.
Yeah.
That they were like, hey, you're not doing it with all of them, but you're doing it with enough of them. Guys, so you got to check your PDMPs. I internally in our office, because we're currently using Practice Fusion, but we're migrating because Practice Fusion is messing up. Um, we would check the PDMP for Florida called eForce the afternoon before. So if your appointment's at 9 a.m., we're checking it at 4 p.m. the day before. Now, a lot of the EHRs in the market are doing the PDMP at the time of the visit. They'll automatically check for you. And they'll document that they checked it for you so you can get ahead of this. You need to look at the PDMP and not just run it to make sure you see what drugs are on there because you're going to be the one responsible. If your name is at the top of that list, you're the one that had the most information about what everybody else is doing, what everybody else is prescribing, what every other pharmacy is giving to those patients. The bottom of the list, hey, you were the first one. That patient was brand new. Now, I mean, you should see some of the stuff I see. You should see it. I mean, you can literally see how patients will doctor shop. They'll go to the ER. They'll say certain things. They don't care if they get the ER visit because they're either not going to pay or they're on Medicare and Medicaid. And then they don't care, right? Because they're not paying anything for it. And then what they
Right.
do is they get their script from the ER provider, even if it's only 5 days. Then they go to the next doc. Then they go back. Then they go to their specialist. Then they hop around to this. Then they hop around over there. Then they hop around to an ER 3 counties away. We had one patient that we had to discharge because she kept playing this system of going to an ER in Jax, seeing us for visits, and then going to an ER in Daytona. And she would do this all the time. And somehow my team and I didn't catch it until recently, which I'm a little bit disappointed about. We're addressing all that internally. But it's a matter of the pharmacies didn't catch it, the ERs never caught it, but we're taking responsibility and at least punting that away. The ER wants
Oh
to take
yeah.
that headache, go for it, boo-boo. So guys, you got to protect yourself. If you're even thinking that you're close to being in a gray area, make sure you document how you're not in the wrong. The healthcare in the US, the healthcare system in the US is broken. I do agree with most people. I disagree that this is the worst in the world, and I
Right.
disagree that it can't be fixed. I do believe that the healthcare system can be fixed with a few small tweaks. We're not as much of a high trust society as I would personally like, but I mean, hey, it's because I like to follow rules, right? So if that's going to be the case, you need to trust but verify. Patients are not dumb. They can be lazy, but they're very, very good at filling out paperwork. I've seen it in all kinds of environments. They're very, very, very good at filling out paperwork. So you need to be very, very diligent on checking paperwork. So this one
I
was one
agree.
of those I know a little bit different. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you do, I'm more than happy to do more of these. I love to play devil's advocate. My entire family says I should have been a lawyer, but I had senioritis as a freshman in high school, so it was a very serious case of senioritis. So I
It's
couldn't
never
I
too
couldn't do
late,
it.
Jose. It's never too
Oh
late.
God. I've thought about it actually. And me being a loophole person that I
Sam
was,
Prokop hasn't tried to convince you
a
otherwise.
couple people have. So you'll laugh at this. I actually thought about it, and I thought about doing it in such a loophole way that you won't be surprised by. I was like, there's got to be a way to study for the bar and just take the test because I'm a pretty good test taker by myself. So if there's a way I can do it without spending all the money on law school, then screw it, I'll do it. California was the only state at the time that I was looking at this in like '09, 2010, that I could take the bar without going through a law degree program. But I would have to go
You have
to
to.
California and work in California for a couple of years before I could move my license. But once you have a bar in California, Texas, New York, or Florida, it's usually pretty easy to move around to most of the states, as with most licensing.
I mean,
Once you got
it doesn't sound bad, but
the
I mean,
bar is one
this.
of the hardest tests I've heard from a lot of people. So I had some stones even looking
I'm
at
just
it.
saying the situation. You
Yeah,
moved to
yeah, yeah,
California
yeah,
for a
yeah.
few years and worked
I
there.
mean,
And both.
I just, again, it was just something to where then I'd have to sit down and just, all right, now I got to study this bar, right? So, I just ended up not doing it. But I've thought about it, and it's just again senioritis and laziness on my end. Perhaps a
I,
missed opportunity, perhaps not. I don't know. You guys can
it
let
could have
us
been a
know.
blessing in disguise. You never know.
Could you imagine
That
how insufferable I'd be if I had a law degree, if I had the law degree and passed the bar in any of the states? God, I would be awful. I'm awful
we
now.
would.
Are you kidding me? Huh?
I said I'd probably be friends with you.
Oh yeah, 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 absolutely. Because I'd be entertaining, but I mean, you wouldn't want to deal with me. Ah, but yeah, so guys, I hope you guys have happy holidays. Next week on Monday, we'll be back at 1:30. I
Yep.
apologize that we're late today. That's on me. I double booked myself and I didn't even realize it until like 1 o'clock. Um, so yeah, so
Yeah, next week we'll be talking
next
about the business associate agreement and sort of how to vet out who's a good business associate, who isn't, and
so
we'll dive into some
yeah.
examples. I'm going to do a little bit of research, but I'd say a commonality that we see in terms of bad business associates are, I would say, IT companies. There's always the mom and pops that are like, I don't know what this is. I don't want to sign it. And I'm sure you probably have some examples off the top of your
I've
head
got some
too.
interesting examples and we can play with that as well. And then the week after that we were talking about doing the I remember it now.
We need to get
It was
Sam back
the
on. We need to get
yeah,
her
we
back
need to
on
get
for
Sam
one.
back on. Well, maybe we'll do that for next year.
Yeah.
But the one after that we were talking about doing as well the HIPAA who gets access, the HIPAA trivia. Who gets access to information?
Okay.
I mean,
That's
that's
the
what we
one
had
we were talking about
discussed.
doing on the 30th, but are we
We can
trying
do
to,
either one. You're the one in charge of the schedule.
well, I'll that's fine. We're gonna do them both regardless, but I'll pick one that we can do next week. I say we stick to the vetting the BAs, but this one
That's fine.
we can maybe do in the new year,
Yeah,
first week. That's
perfect.
what
We
we'll
can
do.
start the new year out with who gets access to information trivia.
Perfect. And if any of you guys have any topics that you'd like us to discuss, like I said, we've been doing these since October last year. Covered quite a bit of ground, but anything that's going on at your practice, Um, anything compliance related, anything in healthcare related, let us know. We'd love to talk about it. Or if you're interested in an interview as well, we can maybe set that up.
Let's get some information out there for everybody.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions, concerns, please feel free to put it in chat. I'll leave this open here for another 30 seconds, Jose.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
I know I asked you this last week. Is your Christmas shopping done?
Yes.
That's good.
Yes. I'm done. I
I
am.
set up a trampoline
Oh,
yesterday.
you did it?
Oh
You're
my
able to do
goodness.
it? How long did it take you?
Take a guess.
Based on your statement, I'm guessing that it took you 5 hours.
It took exactly 5 hours, and I'll tell you why. It would have only took me 2 hours.
But you built it backwards?
But the problem is, it was one of those. It comes with a net, because
Okay.
you know I don't trust my daughter without that. So um, we put all the springs on it, right? Put all the springs
Okay.
on it. Put the trampoline in, and then when I was installing the net, which also has to, so when you set up the actual trampoline part, you kind of position the net. Well,
Yeah.
I there's a it's hard to explain, but I shifted the net too far one side, so when I was trying to put the bars down in it, I it was all wonky, and I was like, something's not right. So I ended up having to take all the springs out, 106 springs, and I had to re
106 springs.
106 springs
God.
in that
So you built
sucker.
it twice. You didn't build it
I
once.
basically built it twice. But the good thing is, if I ever, for whatever reason, if I move, if I sell it, or whatever,
A hurricane's coming, you know
I
how to
can
take
take
that
that
thing off.
sucker. I can take that sucker down in 20 minutes.
That sounds awful.
But yeah, that whole process took about 5 hours when everything's all said and done. But hey, it's a learning experience, and
Yep. You
my
live and
daughter
you
will
learn.
my daughter will be happy, to say the least.
She better
Christmas
be.
Day. Oh yeah, that's what I said too. She better be. There's
Either that or you're gonna see how far she can fly, right?
blood, sweat, and tears went into that thing. But cool. Well, I don't see any questions trickling in.
No worries.
Jose, I hope you have a good Christmas with you and your family.
Yeah,
Everyone that attended today, thank you so much. Again, please feel free to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. This video will go up on there in the next couple days. Be on the lookout for some correspondence for next week's webinar. And in the meantime, we hope you have a Merry Christmas as well, and we'll see you next week.
have a good one, guys.
Thank you. Bye, Jose.
Bye.
Sunshine.